Welcome back to another episode of Big Apple Breakdown. Today we have a special interview with Justin Penik of John Boy Media and the host of Talking Giants.
Yeah, we want to thank Justin for taking time out of his day to come spend some time with us and join our show. It means a lot to us. We really appreciate it. We also, as always, I want you guys to like the video, comment, subscribe, go down below the link, look at all of our socials, follow us everywhere. Also go to Dugout Mugs, buy yourself a baseball bat mug, code Big Apple for 20% off your entire order. Father's Day is coming up. It's a great gift for your dad. Birthdays, anything. Spend the summer drinking out of your Dugout mug.
Yeah, we had a great conversation with Justin, so let's get into it. Thanks,
Yes,
guys.
Thank you, guys.
Now we're introducing the guest of our show. Today we have Justin Penik of John Boy Media and Talking Giants. Justin, how you doing?
Fellas, what's going on? Nice to be with you. We're in June. OTA is still going on for football, of course, but we're getting towards that really dead part of the off season. So trying to enjoy the summer a little bit, working on some stuff, but doing pretty good. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me on.
We're doing great. We really appreciate you coming on. Football season will be here before we know it, so
yeah,
we're really excited.
Yeah, let's talk some Giants. So, after maybe the worst season in franchise history, I think we all could agree quarterback was probably the number one issue. So they did a lot of addressing it. They had Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and drafted Jackson Dart. And after this offseason, do you feel they did a good enough job at upgrading that position compared to last year?
Oh yeah. I memean, compared to last year, 100%. I mean, the Giants went into the 2024 season and they have the home broadcast team after week 1 where they get blown out against the Vikings. And this is how you know. This is how you know that directives are coming down within the organization. They get blown out against the Vikings, and you have people that work for the Giants asking on the post-game show, is Daniel Jones really the guy? And they haven't asked that question for all the years prior that Daniel Jones was there. So last year was all about, especially when Brian Dable and Joe Shane needed to go in self-preservation mode and to save their jobs. Last year was all about Daniel Jones is the wrong quarterback for this team. Probably shouldn't have paid him that contract. He wasn't really worth it. Okay, so we're going to move off of him. So that's what last year was about. And clearly what this offseason was about was we're going to get as many quarterbacks in here as possible where we will not be in the same situation that we've been in the last 2 years where somehow Tommy DeVito is starting football games for this team, right? So they added, obviously you have Jackson Dart, who I kind of hope doesn't play this year. I'm sure we'll maybe talk about that and why. Kind of think that. I think a lot of fans have the same opinion on that as well. I love the Jameis Winston buffer, even though you have Jackson Dart. I love Jameis Winston as that buffer. It may seem unnecessary. It may seem irrelevant, but I think Jameis Winston is an important player, specifically for the 2025 Giants. And then obviously you have Russell Wilson, who I think a lot of fans and myself is hoping that, may not lead to great football, but it'll lead to watchable football and, lead to, some football where the Giants are relevant in the months of November and December. And that's my expectation and my want for the Giants this year. It's not to go out there and win double-digit games or kick a ton of ass, but my ask is that I still want to watch this football team in November and December. And hopefully that's what the quarterbacks that they added this offseason, hopefully, however it shakes out with games played, that's what I'm hoping the Giants are thinking forward to. They want to be relevant when it comes down to those cold weather months and, when we get down to December.
I think you made a good point about Jameis Winston because each of the last 2 years, we've had quarterbacks with Tommy DeVito, who, let's be honest, is not an NFL quarterback, playing games in November, like not even late December, where we have month plus of football left, and he's starting football games in us before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito's he's fun and it's a fun story, and it became like a meme. And hey, we're in a Pizza Hut commercial with from that actress from Ginny and Georgia. Like, all right, cool. But if you're a fan of the New York Giants, it's not as funny. And it's kind of funny that I feel like you could almost say the same thing about Jameis, except he is better than Tommy DeVito. Where a lot of fans, NFL fans, you kind of laugh at Jameis and you kind of laugh at like, oh, it's kind of funny. He's a funny dude, but how funny is it when a guy throws multiple interceptions for your team? So we'll see how that plays out this year. But you're right about DeVito, and I think that is the exact scenario that the Giants wanted to avoid. Now, hey, I'm a fan of this football team. We have retired the phrase, it can't get worse. Like, that phrase has been retired. So I'm not going to sit here and say Tommy DeVito won't find a way to start a game this year. You never know how things shake out. But certainly the way that the Giants have operated this offseason, their goal is that Tommy DeVito is not going to start a game this year. And, really, hopefully their goal is that they're not going to have more than 2 quarterbacks start this year. But you never know.
Of course. So with all this and the way this offseason has shaped up so far, what kind of grade would you give Joe Shane for the roster he's put together so far for this next season?
How would I grade the roster, or how would I grade the offseason? Because I think those are 2 very different things.
How would you grade the offseason?
Okay. How would I grade the offseason? I'd give the offseason a B plus. Here's why I wouldn't give it an A. I still don't fully know. I don't know if I believe in Jackson Dart just full out as a QB prospect. I believe in Jackson Dart that he can develop. And I think the greatest asset and the greatest weapon that Jackson Dart has on his side this year is that he isn't fully expected to play right away, and that hopefully he will not be thrown into the fire when it comes to playing and starting games in the NFL. If that comes in December, different story. We'll see where the team is at. But I would feel a lot less confident about Dart if we're talking about him being the week 1 starter and Russell Wilson isn't on this team, or even if he's competing with Jameis. I think if like that storyline would be that he would eventually start. So obviously Dart's the biggest piece of this offseason because the quarterback is the most important position in all sports, and Dart is expected to be that future for the Giants, right? So that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't have it at an A. I don't fully love not upgrading the offensive line. Now, okay, Justin, well, where's the piece that they could have upgraded on the offensive line? That's something I can't fully give to you, but I don't feel awesome about the starting 5 with the Giants offensive line being like an above average unit. I think they can be an average unit together. They're really relying on the health of Andrew Thomas to stay healthy to be an average offensive line. And I also don't know if they did enough to help the run defense, because they were a bad run defense last year. But they made some upgrades at interior defensive line, obviously drafting Darius Alexander there too. No changes at linebacker. Javon Holland's going to help out the secondary, and Paulson Adebo's hopefully going to help out the secondary in the run defense as well. But those areas, the D-line when it comes to stopping the run outside of Dex, and then the O-line, that's what's stopping me from giving it an A. But I did really like this offseason in particular. I really love the draft and the value with all those picks that they got.
Of course. Also, just comparing it to last offseason, it did help a lot that they weren't on HBO Hard Knocks, and there wasn't a look into all of that this year.
They'll be on it again this year, though.
Oh yeah, in
season. Just everybody gets their wish. We'll get to see how the quarterback scenarios play out, how those quarterback meeting goes. I haven't even thought too much about that. I feel like that's a giant storyline and a headline.
I texted Johnny about it.
Yeah,
because I thought that was funny. Just I don't know the way it shaped up last time.
Yeah. The offseason one was a disaster. I mean, it didn't happen after 1 year, so no team wants to do it.
Oh no.
Yeah, no one will do that again.
Yeah.
But moving back to Dart, so you've said a few times already here that you don't want him starting at all, and I've kind of seen a lot of stuff from reports and a lot of fans like kind of really hyping him up, wanting him to start early on. Why don't you want to see him play at all this year?
I mean, this is a quarterback that was drafted 25th, and he was the second quarterback taken in the draft. There were 6 quarterbacks, I'm pretty sure, taken in last year's draft in the first round. And, I just think from Dart coming from Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin's system, that is it's very easy, right? It's very easy for quarterbacks to kind of process. They called it Nate Tice came on our show and he called it a money play offense. It's searching for big plays. It's designed for big plays. Wide receivers do not really run a complete route tree. What you're doing pre-snap, what you're being asked to do pre-snap is not going to be the same at what you're doing at the NFL level. And you can even make the argument and say, well, that's all quarterbacks are going to have to make that transition. But I think Dart's transition is just going to have to be a lot more drastic compared to some of the other quarterbacks that we've seen in the past couple of years, especially when you compare it to last year's class and the guys that came out there. So because I have questions on Dart and because I have questions on his overall development, that's why I don't want him to play. But the traits are there, the quote unquote traits that everybody talks about. And, I get excited by Jackson Dart because Brian Daboll gets excited by Jackson Dart, because there's mobility there, because there's toughness there. And it's not only just because of the toughness. There is arm strength there. There is arm talent there. There is deep ball ability. There is a natural aggressiveness where I think that's what Brian Daboll has been searching for out of any quarterback since he stepped foot on the New York Giants. Will you be a quarterback that will throw the damn ball down the field? I don't care if you complete it. I don't care if it's intercepted. Will you just freaking try it? And they begged Daniel Jones to do that. Didn't do that. Brought in Drew Lock, who that was like his MO at Denver. Like, I'm just going to heave it down the field. He didn't do it. So I think Dart has this, I think his attitude and his moxie is kind of how he plays, where it is aggressive. It is confident. And I think that's what really has attracted Brian Daboll to Jackson Dart. But that type of stuff, I don't want Dart to lose because he may struggle early on, because there's a complicated blitz front and there's complicated looks pre-snap, and Jackson Dart may not know how to call all that stuff out at the line right away. So then he takes a bunch of sacks and there's some negative plays and there's some turnovers and things don't necessarily go right away. So then he loses that confidence. He loses the moxie that he plays with. Let him sit, let him develop. He may struggle right away, but the pressure and the lights will be a lot dimmer if that happens in December or even next year than if he were to start week 1, week 2 this year. Like, take the mental reps, learn what you need to learn, get the reps in on the practice field, get the reps in preseason where it doesn't really matter, and we'll see you when we see you under less strenuous circumstances.
And I also think another part of it, at least this is my opinion, it's if it was just Jameis Winston and him, okay, maybe. But
yes,
I think some Giants fans are underestimating Russell Wilson because, let's be honest, in my opinion, I think Russell Wilson's going to be the best quarterback the Giants have had since 2015 Eli Manning. I think maybe 2022 Daniel Jones is the only other argument, but this guy isn't a scrub. He's accomplished, and we've had such bad quarterback play in the last decade where I think Wilson's, like I said, the best quarterback since Eli in 2015.
Yeah, because what I think Russ is going to do is I think Russ is going to throw the deep ball. It may not be exactly what Brian Daboll wants. I don't love that Russell Wilson takes a lot of sacks. I don't love that Russell Wilson doesn't have the best quick game numbers and things like that. But what Russ does well is that moon ball. That ball that, on a moon ball is a ball that stays up in the air for 2.5 seconds or more. And you have guys on this team that can go up and get it on the sideline. Malik Neighbors can certainly do it if you give him an opportunity. Malik Neighbors is just going to get open on the sideline. Forget about contested opportunities. Darius Slayton is a guy that has speed. Jalen Hyatt, that's what he did his rookie year. Now, I'm not saying that Jalen Hyatt is a guy that's going to come back out and set the world on fire, but what Jalen Hyatt can do what Jalen Hyatt can do well is he can run in a straight line. And Russell Wilson's going to give him an opportunity to run in a straight line and be fast. And Russ will know how to hit him. So that's where I get excited about Russ, is that he's going to do certain things that Daboll is going to ask him to do. There's weapons on this Giants offense that he's going to be able to utilize. There's hopefully going to be a decent run game as well with Cam Scatterbo and Tyron Tracy. So hopefully will be an offense that Russell Wilson can run. May not run it that well. May not run it that well like he used to run an offense back in Seattle, but expecting definitely some more explosiveness and just overall better consistency.
Of course. Maybe it's just because I'm a Jets fan and Jackson Dart's a Utah guy, but I could comparing him to Zach Wilson almost, but I could see him just like Zach Wilson. If a couple things don't really go his way, I could see him really having a hard time with his confidence.
Yeah.
But
and it's such a, it's crazy that NFL quarterbacks, like, it's such a crapshoot. It's such a crapshoot, and the NFL isn't even good at evaluating what is the most important thing that any NFL team needs to do. The NFL is not even good at doing the most important thing that every team needs to do. So that again, I don't know if Dart's going to be good, like, and I hope that he is, but I think the biggest chance that he has is learning and sitting, and I think that's been a precedent that's been set by a couple of the quarterbacks that have been good in years prior and years past.
Of course. So, keeping on with the younger guys, the new draft class, do you think, they added obviously the quarterback in Dart, they added Abdul Carter, and they added a really talented running back in Cam Scatterbo. Do you think, looking back in a couple years, we might see this as Joe Shane's most impressive Giants draft?
If Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart are studs, then yes, because that's who's going to define this class. Even if Abdul Carter, Darius Alexander, or Marcus Bowe, Cam Scott, even if those guys are still are like starters, maybe this is even a stretch. But if Joe Shane misses on Jackson Dart, then that will be kind of like, I feel like that's the nail in the coffin for most GMs, right? If you whiff on the quarterback, and especially if you really whiff on a quarterback, and I don't think that Joe Shane has done a good enough job through his first 3 years at really fully building up this roster. So we'll see. The Giants are a very weird and strange team right now. They've always been a weird and strange team because they won that playoff game in 2022, and all the decisions that they chose to make after that, with tagging Barkley, extending Jones, and then not bringing Barkley back. And they've been a weird team because they so overexceeded expectations in 2022. Then they had 2 seasons that everybody expected them to have at the start of the rebuild. But John Mara doesn't want to be impatient, so they're such a weird team on where they're at in this timeline. So I think this draft class is inevitably, like your question is about the draft class and what's it going to be remembered for. It's going to be remembered for Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart. If Carter's a stud and Jackson Dart proves to be, a franchise quarterback that's competing year in and year out, that's what the draft class is going to be really, really remembered for, in my opinion.
Of course.
So you mentioned John Mara, and we all know that end of season interview he had where Joe Shane and Brian Daboll in the hot seat. And my question for you is, what do these guys have to do to keep their jobs? Because their schedule is so tough. Is it a win marker? Is it progress? In your mind, what do they have to do to extend their stay here?
Winning is progress. And this is something that, I've been doing this, talking about this team for a couple of years, talking football for a couple of years now. And everybody tries to paint the picture, especially this time of year, right? This time of year. Oh, but if they can score points, or if they could just do this, do that. Winning games is the cure for everything. You want to know how you create a culture? You win games. You want to know how you have a good locker room? You win, and you're competitive, right? That's how things are done. You win, and it almost doesn't matter how you do it. Like that 2022 offense, I mentioned 2022. That wasn't great. They were middle of the pack in scoring. They were not explosive at all, but it didn't look sexy, but they won. And that's what made people believe that the Giants were back. You win some football games. Joe Shane's seat gets a lot less hot. Brian Daboll's seat gets a lot less hot. And then there is a vision, and then there is a path forward. If you don't win football games, then you could sugarcoat it all you want. You can try and cherry pick these stats and this and that. But I think we're at a point in this regime that you can't really do that. It's winning football games. That is going to be the thing that shows progress for the Giants this year.
So just to follow up, it's January of 2026. In your opinion, do these guys have their jobs or not? If you had to guess right now.
If I had to guess right now, yes, I think they do have their jobs. I think there's a better chance that Brian Daboll's gone, and then they also keep Joe Shane, which would be repeating the same fear, the same very big fear that I had, just a couple days before the season ended. Like heading into that Philadelphia game, the final game of the season, that Monday, Tuesday, we're all really worried that Brian Daboll's going to be fired and that Joe Shane's going to be kept. And it's not even like a pro Brian Daboll thing, but it's just like you want to keep everybody on the same cycle. And then once Wednesday, Thursday comes around, there's this meeting that Brian Daboll has with John Mara, kind of saves his job. And then the temperature on Brian Daboll by the time game day comes around is, Jay Glazer reports that basically that everybody's safe. And then they go and they play that game in Philly and they lose and they kind of tank it by who they chose to play, right? So I still think that Joe Schoen is quite safe. I don't know about Brian Daboll, but I do think that they're going to do enough where they could save their jobs, or they're going to do barely enough where, John Mara will be convinced that Brian Daboll is still the guy to, hey, Brian Daboll, Jackson Dart, this is the pairing that you were signed up for. Give it one more year. Jackson Dart will play next year if it gets to a certain point. Jackson Dart's going to play regardless because all these quarterbacks are basically here for 1 year.
And if I'm not mistaken, last year when the rumors were going on, you preferred from both to get fired. If I'm not, I believe you had a video. Yes. Okay. That's right.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Giants almost are putting Daboll and Schoen, like their backs are against the wall with all the Stafford rumors earlier this year, the Rodgers rumors. You almost put them, the ownership almost put them in a position to start to get desperate this offseason. And for two guys that never had their choice of a quarterback to finally pick their quarterback, I feel like this could all end up being a disaster because they're just rushing to develop their guy, and it's just ultimately going to end with them losing their jobs.
Yeah, and if they had, if Brian Daboll genuinely has that belief in Jackson Dart, genuinely, I like this guy more. They had an opportunity to take J.J. McCarthy last year. They had an opportunity to draft Michael Penix. They had an opportunity to draft Bo Nix. I mean, they desperately tried to trade up for Drake May, and according to Hard Knocks, they would have traded up for Jaden Daniels if Washington was taking calls. So they didn't really have opportunities to draft these quarterbacks because they win football games later or whatnot. But if Brian Daboll genuinely has this good belief, and so does Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen's part of this too. Joe Schoen is the one who's drafting these guys. It's not just Brian Daboll. If they have this belief in Jackson Dart, then I'm with it. I'm for it as an organization. But yeah, you mentioned it. If you're forcing the pick because you feel pressure to save your job, I would have been fine this year heading into the year with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. I am not a fan of just taking a quarterback to take a quarterback. I don't subscribe to the Arizona Cardinals, blueprint of you could draft Josh Rosen 1 year just to take Kyler Murray the next year. It's also because they had the number 1 overall pick, which that always doesn't, you're not always given that on a silver platter, even though the Giants almost were given that on a silver platter. Thank you, Colts. But if they have that belief in Dart, I'm for it. Let's ride. Let's rock and roll. But if you're forcing that pick, which certainly, there were rumors before the draft about there were some people that were pro Shedeur Sanders in the front office. And, is it Brian Daboll that stepped in there and, hey, I want to take Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart's my guy. I'd like to think that they came to that decision collaboratively, even if there were disagreements along the way. But overall, it seems like the energy that Daboll talks about with Dart, that gets me excited. So I don't think Dart was forced, even though that certainly is a question that Giants fans, you kind of have to ask yourself with the timeline of this regime for sure.
With the Brian Daboll energy thing, it's exciting seeing him get excited for him in the videos, but I can't just tell if he just hated having Daniel Jones or just loved Jackson Dart or if he's just so happy to not have Daniel Jones anymore. I can't tell, honestly.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I don't think he hated Daniel Jones. I mean, they gave him a contract. They gave him a big contract, man, and good for Daniel Jones negotiating that thing. You see what Baker got paid. You see what Geno Smith gets paid, and it's damn, those contracts look great compared to Daniel Jones. They really botched that early on. I think that was a big learning lesson for them to not negotiate against yourself. But I think they liked what they did early on with Daniel Jones, and what I think Daniel Jones didn't do is Daniel Jones didn't take the next step up from what he was doing in 2022. There were line problems in 2022. There's line problems now. There was line problems in 2022. There were especially personnel problems. You don't have the receivers to throw deep. So they were like, all right, well, we're going to make that offseason about speed. And then he just never evolved into doing the things that Brian Daboll was asking him to do, which certainly now there are 3 quarterbacks on this team that their MOs are being aggressive for better or for worse. Holding onto the ball with Russ and taking sacks. Jameis Winston is going to, maybe throw some interceptions, and then Jackson Dart may even do a combination of both of those things. So certainly they added 3 guys this offseason that their issues are not going to be what held Daniel Jones back.
Of course. So keeping on with that, with the quarterback room. So obviously Russell Wilson will be the day 1 starter. How do you see this in the end shaking up? Do you think Wilson starts for most of the year? I know you said you don't want Dart to play, but do you think Winston will get some run, or do you think it's pretty much Wilson the whole way?
I think it will be Wilson the whole way unless he gets hurt in between like September, October, maybe parts of November. But the Giants' late bye, and I know a lot of people have talked about this, but it really is important. That week 14 bye that they have is really at a decent spot for kind of a Jackson Dart ramp-up period, or even a landing zone for him, depending on what kind of metaphor you want to use. But because they have that Monday Night Football game against the Pats, and then that leads into their bye, and then coming out of their bye, they have back-to-back divisional games, an away game against the Raiders, which is indoors, which you got to love that, an indoor late December game. And then they come back home again, I believe. And I believe the Dallas Commanders and the Vikings are in that. It's not that those games aren't in the right order. The Dallas game is the last one, but even playing the Vikings would be like, that's an interesting matchup for maybe even Jackson Dart too, because Brian Flores is going to throw elaborate blitz packages at you, and he's going to try and throw curveballs and changeups, and you gotta know what's coming, and you got to call out protections at the line. So I think that time, if Jackson Dart is going to play, my ideal time is those last 4 games of the year, where you have a couple divisional games that'll be a familiar opponent that Jackson Dart will already do prep for earlier in the year because they'll already play them once. He'll travel away across the country to Vegas, but it'll be indoors, which is good for me. And then he'll play a really tough defense and a really tough defense coordinator on Brian Flores, and we'll really see what he's got. So that's the area and the part of the schedule that if he's going to play, that's where I think Dart will play. And knowing the Giants and just knowing their schedule, it's really hard. I think that's where Dart will play this year. I don't think Russ is going to be at a point, and the Giants are going to be at a point coming off that bye where, all right, we're in it and we got to go. Maybe they'll mathematically still be in it, but then the pitch will be, we're looking for a spark, which Daboll has talked about, sparks all the time with the quarterback room. We're looking for a spark to maybe spark a playoff run and to get us back into the mathematical hunt, and then insert Jackson Dart. That's what I think is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving on to one of the lone bright spots of last season, Malik Neighbors had a stud rookie season for a bad quarterback room. And now this year they upgraded the quarterback room, obviously. What do you think Russell Wilson could add to his game, and eventually Jackson Dart?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for Neighbors, there were just, I think less than 10, like there were not a ton of big plays. And the big plays, they do stand out. I think the best throw that Malik Neighbors got last year on a deep ball was by Tim Boyle in garbage time against the Ravens. I genuinely, like, it was this back shoulder, really good throw. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this guy could do that. Like, let's give him more of those chances. And he really just didn't get it. So what we're going to see this year from Malik Neighbors, 170 targets last year. In 15 games, he got 170 targets. I almost want less volume for Malik Neighbors this year and more efficiency. Like, yards per reception, Malik Neighbors ideally is a receiver that's getting 14, 15 yards per reception, not 11. 11 yards per reception is like a possession slot wide receiver type of numbers. Malik Neighbors is not just a possession type of wide receiver. He's a guy that can, take a ball to the house, like yards after the catch, like those types of plays, the stuff that really stood out and the juice of Malik Neighbors that got you excited about LSU. We didn't fully see it last year. Like, I think there's more, and I don't think it's because of him. I think it's because of the offense and quarterback and scheme and things like that, how it was limited because of quarterback play. So that's the main thing that I'm hoping for this year. Like, Malik Neighbors showed that he could get open. Like, he can get open on the sideline. He can get open anywhere. I was really impressed with his, the intermediate part of the field between 10 to 19 yards, an area in which the Giants offense really struggled with 2 years prior. That's not an area that they, struggled with as much, and it was because of Malik Neighbors' presence last year. So I want Malik Neighbors to be less about volume, because that's really what his 2024 was, with 109 catches and 1,200 yards. Even if he gets close to 100 catches, which he should if he plays 17 games, I want that yards per reception to go up. Even if he doesn't get as many targets, like, everything should kind of just be better and elevated for Malik Neighbors, because I want him to be more of a big play guy, a yak guy, more of a wow guy. Whereas last year he was wow, but not for the ways that he was wow at LSU, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I even thought it was unbelievable. Teams knew where the ball was going because he was like the Giants' only weapon, and they still were able to get him the ball all the time. So,
to your point about the targets, I remember weeks 2 through 4 before he got hurt against Dallas, I believe, I actually thought they were going to kill him. Daniel Jones was throwing the ball like every possession, and it was insane for this guy in his first month of playing NFL football.
He had I'm looking at it right now, 45 targets, weeks 2, 3, and 4 combined, 45 targets.
It was insane, and it was a Thursday night game, I believe, the Dallas game. So it was like 17 days he was just getting the ball thrown him every time.
Yeah, and those were in 2 of those games that I just mentioned. The Cleveland game, he had less than 10 yards per reception. In the Dallas game, he had 9.6 yards per reception. Like, Malik Neighbors is a dude that should be getting, again, like 13 yards per reception. Like, he needs to be more of this big play guy. Like, this is like Wan'Dale Robinson should be looking at like 10 yards per reception and be like, I should aspire to be like that.
Yeah.
So moving on, I got a question about Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah.
So when the Giants drafted Carter, some people speculated that they would move on from Kayvon, but Joe Shane quickly came out and said that they're not looking to trade him. Are you surprised that they're not looking to trade him, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think for 1 year, let it be a really good problem.
Okay.
I don't even think it's a problem. I think it's an advantage. I mean, we are so quick as Giants fans, and like, there are some people that, he's overrated, he's this, he's that. Okay, is Kayvon Thibodeau the 5th overall pick that we kind of drafted him for? No, but I actually think Kayvon Thibodeau's 2024 season, it's given me more hope for what he can be as an NFL player than what he did in 2023, where 2023 he had double-digit sacks. But that year, 2023, sure, he got the sacks, but his win rate, his pressure rate, like just his QB hits, the only time he got in the backfield was the sacks. And you can't take away the sacks. The sacks are important. They're drive enders. They're really valuable. But what he did last year is he got more pressure on the quarterback. He got in the backfield more. He won in some more inconsistent and different ways. And he even had an injury that set him back a little bit. And he still increased all that other advanced stuff. So I am excited about Kayvon Thibodeau's, his 2025. And I think at least for 1 year, they picked up his 5th-year option, which that will be next year because this is his 4th year. So at least for this year, like, you can have this awesome rotation of pass rushers. There's 4 of them right now with Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, and then Chauncey Golston from, he was from the Cowboys and edge rusher. He was a starter for the Cowboys last year, and that was the Cowboys. So I like having this good problem of, I don't want, as Abdul Carter is still learning the position, he's learning what it means to be a pro. You can have Abdul Carter can play like a nut. Abdul Carter can also play off-ball linebacker. And then you can have Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns on the field at the same time. You can kick Chauncey Golston inside. So I like that there's depth. And sometimes people want to automatically just, we have enough. We don't need this guy. Let's just trade him away. Like, no, let's enjoy the depth, and let's have the Giants pass rush be an advantage and have something that's an advantage for once.
Yeah, in today's NFL, like, you're always rotating pass rush. You can never have enough pass rush.
Yep.
And these guys are so versatile that you can kick in an edge rusher inside and be just as effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants' defensive line is actually, I think, a strength for them, which, the last place team, you got to rely on your strengths. And hopefully Shane Bowen could used them really well, who honestly didn't impress me a lot last year as a defensive coordinator. What were your thoughts of his first season?
He actually just put out they just had a presser that I really want to watch. And I saw that somebody put out a clip of basically he was almost alluding to that you don't want to put too much on the plate of young guys. And that's, if I'm like optimistic Giants fan and why Shane Bowen maybe didn't have a great first year, I'm saying to myself, well, he had a young secondary. Deontay Banks, second-year player. Cordell Flott is 22 years old and has horrible practices every single year. And Drew Phillips was a rookie. Tyler Nubin was a rookie. Jason Pinnock is still learning the safety position as he transitions to that at the NFL level. So why are we not like disguising coverages and doing the rotation stuff that you were doing at Tennessee to try and force turnovers and really fool quarterbacks? Why are we running a very simple defense? Well, the optimistic Giants fan of me is saying because of the secondary and the lack of depth and the lack of good quality players, and Deontay Banks being your CB1 is horrible when you don't have anybody on the team that can make a play on a freaking football. So that's the optimistic guy in me. And then the pessimistic person would just be like, well, Shane Bowen may not be a good defense coordinator. But let's talk optimistic. They added Javon Holland, a guy that certainly is known for his trump card is making plays on the football. Paulson Adebo, I think at his best and when he's healthy, I think he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league in terms of making a play on the football, forcing incompletions, passes defense, things like that. He may allow catches, he may allow a lot of targets, but if the ball's thrown in his direction, you know that there's a chance that it can end up on the ground or it can even end up in his hands for an interception and then change of possession. So that's the hope for this Giants defense, is that the personnel that they added on the back end, especially on the back end, because the pass rush was already good last year. The personnel that they added on the back end in Adebo, Tyler Nubin's second year, and his trump card at Minnesota was getting his hands on the football and forcing turnovers there too. That was what he was known for there. So put more on the plates of these guys. You don't have rookies running around there anymore. You have guys that are in the second year of their system. Tyler Nubin, second year. Drew Phillips, second year. Deontay Banks as a CB2, his second year in this system. And then you're adding veterans to the secondary. Put more on their plates. Let's force some turnovers. And, there's no excuse to not do that this year.
All right. Moving on. So last year, it was a disaster, and something that disappointed me the most, even with the terrible record, I thought the energy levels and the fandom levels were just something at least I've never seen in my life. I'm 21. I've been watching the Giants 2008, 2009, and it was in an all-time low, and I think the least you can ask for as a fan is at least be excited. So far this year, I feel like those vibes are starting to come back, where at least Giants fans are excited. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I had Tyrone Tracy in the office 2 weeks ago, and I told him at the start of the interview, I was like, dude, the Giants fans are united. And I don't even know if emotionally I'm there yet, because this team this team hurts me, man. They hurt me. Because I can't not watch. It's kind of like my job to watch, and and I want them, I want them to win, man. It's like I gotta watch and you gotta sit through it. And I go to these games and I'm cold and I'm miserable, So I'm not there yet, but it's awesome to see that so many fans are united right now as the lights go out in the studio. You would think for a podcast studio that we would not have automatic lights that go out after 40 minutes. But no, but Giants fans really are united right now. And I think the energy that the last year's draft class has kind of given us, Malik Neighbors is leading that charge. The energy of really this year's draft class too, where they drafted a bunch of just head cases. Like Jackson Dart is running into people with no regard to his health, which you hope he doesn't do that at the NFL level, but he probably will. Cam Scottaboo runs into telephone poles. Darius Alexander is talking about taking the will out of people to play. Marcus Bowe, there's like a 3.5-minute compilation of him knocking people on their ass, and that's just from last year. I mean, Abdul Carter is calling Hall of Fame generational, like, guys that have their numbers retired in the organization. He's like, hey, can I have your number? And they're saying no, which I'm glad they're saying no. But he has that confidence. He's like, yeah, I could be that. I'm going to be that good. I can take LT's number. I can take Phil Simms' number. So they draft a bunch of head cases. And I think that's galvanizing, hey, the portion of the fan base that that is on Twitter and is active and follows the team in the offseason. Now the challenge is going to be, and this is why I say winning is the thing that's going to change this thing around. The fan that shows up in September that loves the Giants. I've been going to Giants games since 1970, but I don't follow the offseason. I don't know what they did. They're not going to care about the energy and the vibes in the offseason. They're going to care about wins and losses. So that's what they got to go out and do. But the vibes and the energy is very fun, and this training camp is going to be really fun with it.
Of course. And speaking about wins and losses, one of the last questions we want to ask you, do you have an early prediction of the Giants record for this year?
I haven't fully thought about it. I have a question to ask you as well as we wrap up, because I get excited about your Jets. I'm going to go with give me 6.
Okay.
Give me 6-11. And I think that could be a number that's good enough to save everybody, especially with the tough schedule.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think 6 is like a reasonable guess. You know, I can't stand those fans that it's June and they're like, "Oh, Giants are gonna go 11-6. We're gonna make the playoffs." Everybody thinks their teams are the greatest teams in May and June, though.
I would love for those people to be right. I'm hoping.
I would love it. I would love it. But
can I ask my question?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you have any other Giants questions?
I got one more, but I got one more.
No. Let's do good radio.
All right, one more. So after the Giants won the Super Bowl in 2012, they've just been in the darkest cloud, at least in my opinion, in their franchise history. How much longer will it take for Giants football to get back to that form, you think? If you had to guess. Like,
dude, it's
anyone's guess.
It's gonna kind of be it's so QB dependent. I mean that's just today's game. And 2007 was a little different, where you had Eli was good, but Eli was different in 2011 and 2012. I mean it really was different through the regular season. I mean, just throwing all those touchdowns. I think he had like 16 of his 29 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter in 2011, and then obviously what he did in the playoffs and the most. I think he still holds the record for the most yards in a single postseason. So it's so QB dependent. And then obviously, you see what they did in their last Super Bowl run, and then you see how the league has kind of evolved with, the Allens, Lamars, Mahomes, Burrow, and everybody like that, where unless you have a juggernaut like the Philadelphia Eagles, where you have an offensive line and a defensive line that could just kick some ass, you need that quarterback that could change it. So I think unless they get that, to which I don't see that coming under Joe Schoen, unless they get that offensive line and defensive line that can really kick ass, then I think it's going to be on, hey, can Brian Daboll develop this quarterback into, or it doesn't even have to be Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Can whoever draft a quarterback and develop a quarterback into a guy that's franchise worthy, and not just franchise worthy, but a guy that can win you a Super Bowl. And that's certainly what we're hoping Jackson Dart can be. And if it's not Jackson Dart, then it'll be Arch Manning. And if it's not Arch Manning, it'll be whoever else. And we'll keep moving. And the Giants kind of got lucky with Eli, where, dude, it was 15, 16 years of this guy wasn't perfect, but we knew what we were going to get out of him. He was going to be there every Sunday. There were no injury concerns, and got lucky with that. And now you got to find the next guy. So
hopefully we're out of the clouds soon. We can hope.
All right, I'm going to ask my Jets question.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I'm really excited about the Jets this year.
I am too.
I am really excited. I like what they're building. I already like the roster.
Mm-hmm.
The new regime didn't even need to do anything. And I just liked the roster. And here's what I want the Jets to do. And I'm thinking about making a video. I have like a second channel that I'm trying to start, and I'm trying to think about what videos I want to do on there. I want to do a video on the Jets need to run the ball like 40 times a game.
I agree. And I think what?
Don't even throw.
Because with Fields and Breece Hall,
Braylon
Allen, Isaiah Davis,
and that offensive line.
Yes, that offensive line has so much potential.
It's so good. AVT needs to stay healthy.
Oh
Olu, I think, is going to be a Pro Bowler. Like I love this offensive line. And I mean, I love drafting Mason Taylor. People were talking about, we want to draft Tyler Warren in the first round. Nope. Mason Taylor later in the draft. Love it. It's like, don't waste that first round pick on a tight end that, I love it. I love it so much. And in Membo, just take Tyler Warren. No, how about we draft Armand Membo and then we create what could be one of the best tackle duos. There's literally potential for there to be a Mailata and then Lane Johnson situation where, nope, we don't need to touch it for the next 10 years, 15 years. We're going to be good and we're going to be set there. So I don't know what the Jets are going to be this year. I have no idea. But the defense, I think that's already, they have I don't know if Aaron Glenn is not like this defensive mastermind where I think they could take a step back without Salah and then somebody from that tree. But he's still really talented. And that offense and that offensive line, I think they are going to kick ass. And I'm so excited for it.
I like that Glenn he seems more like a CEO type coach.
Yes.
He's not going to be too hands-on anything. He's just going to stand back and manage everything.
I like him better this is without him coaching a single game.
Yeah.
I think I like Aaron Glenn better as a head coach than I do as a defense coordinator. He kind of bugged the shit out of me as a defense coordinator.
Yeah.
He would blitz when his numbers were better when he didn't blitz. And they had problems over there with the Lions. And it's I think it's kind of frustrating that this guy's being hyped. He's being hyped up as a defensive coordinator when I don't even think he's a very good defense coordinator, but you can be a good CEO and a leader of men, which that is what really I think head coaches kind of need to be. So
I feel like the Lions,
I think he's hired a good staff too. So.
Yeah, I feel like the Lions overall, just with analytics, were kind of reckless. The way they would go for it on fourth down, when they played against Washington in that playoff game, they both were aggressive, but Washington was almost they weren't reckless. They knew what they were doing, where the Lions had these 4th and longs, and they were just oh, screw it, let's just go for it.
All right.
So,
what do you think Fields will be like this year for them?
A roller coaster. I was talking about Russ taking sacks. Justin Fields takes sacks. Justin Fields will give you some really good balls, and then Justin Fields will what are you doing, man? I think it'll be really flaky, inconsistent, and bipolar. But why I love any quarterback that can move and can run, your ceiling is increased. Your ceiling is brought up when you can run. The most efficient play in football, and this is from Warren Sharp. I've been saying this stat for years. It's one of my favorite stats. The most efficient play in football is when a quarterback drops back to pass and then scrambles. Now, you don't want to base your entire offense around it, but I think a quarterback that can do that, it just turns a 3rd and 7 into a 15-yard run, and that's huge. That's huge. A 3rd and long conversion. Think of how huge that is. And Russell Wilson even Justin Fields even has design stuff that you could do with him too. I think they need to lean into that. So run the damn ball. New York Jets, run the damn ball. Make the shirts, print the shirts, do it 30 times a game, 40 times a game. I don't care. Do it. I'm a guy. I'm Mr. Throw the ball. I'm Mr. Explosive Play. I'm Mr. Analytics and all this kind of stuff. But I want the Jets to do that because it's as the years have gone on, I've fallen in love with teams that have an identity, for better or for worse. Don't be half pregnant with something. Don't try. Don't be a team that says you're going to run the damn ball and be physical and then have a bad offensive line, and not do anything to upgrade it. I want the Jets to lean into that. They have it. It's their trump card. It's what they have on that roster. Lean into it and be about it this year, and I'm excited for them. So
I love it.
So you think they spring back kind of like a play style they had with the 2009-2010 team? That's kind of similar to what their AFC Championship teams was like.
Yeah, why not?
It worked.
Why not? And you have a better, that was Mark Sanchez back then. I think Fields' legs really is the thing that really gets me excited. And, you even look back to, I'll compare it to my Giants because I just kind of know that team the best. Probably isn't the best comparison in the example, but a big part of why the 2022 Giants offense was good is because Daniel Jones's legs. Daniel Jones, both as a scrambler, was really, really good. And that's where teams fully didn't know that Daniel Jones was scrambling. And then 2023, like later in the year, that playoff game against the Eagles, and then 2023, I think teams adjusted to what Daniel Jones was doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why he declined. But Daniel Jones's legs as a scrambler, and then also Daniel Jones's legs as a designed runner, that was one of the reasons why that offense was decent, and they were average, and they were scoring points at an average rate. So, and Fields is a much better runner than Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is a good runner, but Fields is much more dynamic, can break tackles. I think he's stronger and everything like that. So I'm really excited for our New York Jets. How do you like that?
I love it. And I also like that the Jets went with Fields opposed to one of the other free agent quarterback options. I know Kirk Cousins is still with the Falcons, but there are some rumors that they maybe would go out and try to get him, bring back Rodgers, maybe bring in Wilson. I think because Fields also has this untapped potential where he's still a young guy, and you feel like you can get more out of him. So
we'll see.
Yeah.
We got anything else?
I think we covered everything.
Well, thank you, Justin, for coming on the show. It was a really good time talking to you. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
No, thank you, fellas. Anytime we'll maybe talk before the season, in the season, whatever you guys want. So thanks for having me.
We love that. Well, check out Justin's channel on Talking Giants on John Boy Media. He does a great job covering football and Giants specifically. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.